Hey everyone, Israel is currently in a war against the terror organization Hamas, and we know how hard it can be to keep up with all the news. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of the latest developments out of Israel, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review. Israel's north was set ablaze as massive fires swept across northern communities overnight after Hezbollah significantly increased its missile attacks against Israel's northern border. Firefighters continued to battle the blazes early Tuesday and managed to gain control over the flames. Meanwhile, Hezbollah continued to fire missiles into Israel today as tens of thousands of families remain displaced and are unable to return home for the foreseeable future. All the details in the following report.
Entire areas of northern Israel were set ablaze Monday by missiles fired from Lebanon by the Iranian terror proxy group Hezbollah. Firefighters and rescue teams continued battling the blazes on Tuesday after deploying some 30 firefighting teams to the area and managed, for the most part, to get them under control. A heat wave and dry weather made the fires harder to contain. According to the Israel Parks Authority, the fires covered hundreds of acres of land. Video footage released by Israel's Fire and Rescue Agency showed a massive fire raging in the forest near the northern city of Kiryat Shmona as citizens were evacuated from their homes.
כיום אנחנו עובדים מעל 14 שעות ברציפות בכל השרפות שהיו באזור ברכס רמים, בקריית שמונה. חוברים, אנשים שלנו עובדים שכם אל שכם עם הכבאים הכחולים. ואנחנו פה כדי לשמור על העיר, לשמור על הצפון, למזער פגיעה בנפש, ברכוש, ולעשות מה שצריך כדי להשיב את תחושת הביטחון ולמנוע פגיעות מהשרפות.
Fires also swept through numerous smaller communities in the western Galilee area hit by Hezbollah's missile barrage. Israel police announced road closures and called on all residents still in the area to evacuate their homes. So far, 6 IDF soldiers and 5 Israeli civilians were lightly injured due to smoke inhalation. And as Israeli forces continued to fight the flames, Hezbollah showed little signs of restraint, firing more missiles into northern Israel throughout the day on Tuesday. Since October 7th, the Hezbollah has launched daily missile attacks into Israel from Lebanon, leaving tens of thousands of Israeli families displaced with no return in sight. Monday's missile barrage is seen as a major escalation by the terrorist group. Israel has expressed a desire to see a diplomatic resolution to the conflict on its northern border, but has said it is prepared for a major military offensive against Hezbollah in order to restore security to the north of Israel.
And despite the ongoing efforts to reach a ceasefire and release the hostages, the IDF continued its operation in Gaza on day 243 of the war. The IDF said it conducted airstrikes in central and southern Gaza, targeting Hamas terrorists and infrastructures both above and below ground. Meanwhile, the IDF announced on Wednesday that 9 Israeli soldiers were injured overnight by an explosion at a base in the south. 2 of the soldiers remain in serious condition, 2 were moderately injured, and 5 were lightly injured. The soldiers were evacuated to the hospital in Beersheba to receive medical treatment. The cause of the blast remains unknown and is under investigation.
Well, day 240 of the war in Gaza, targeted operations are continuing in the Philadelphia corridor and in the Rafah area. The 3-week-long IDF operation in Jabalia was completed and troops were withdrawn. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The slow-moving operation is continuing in Rafah and surroundings. Since the beginning of operations in the Rafah area, troops have located and dismantled numerous tunnel entrances and underground infrastructure used by Hamas. In addition, 5 soldiers located 5 rocket launchers loaded and aimed toward Israeli territory, tunnel shafts, and caches of weapons used by Hamas.
ומוצאים מנהרות הברחה ומנהרות שמאפשרות לארגון החמאס להביא אמצעים ויכולות שעלולים לפגוע בכוחותינו ובאזרחינו.
During these operations, troops encountered and eliminated terrorist cells. The IDF is maintaining operational control of the entire 14-kilometer-long Philadelphia axis. Dozens of rocket launchers and at least 20 cross-border tunnels have been discovered and destroyed along the route.
The corridor has been the Hamas lifeline. It has kept Hamas alive with their smuggled deadly weapons. We have already eliminated around 300 terrorists in Rafah in this operation so far.
The IDF announced the completion of its 3-week operation in Jabalia. Forces in Jabalia recovered the bodies of 7 hostages, destroyed more than 10 kilometers of tunnels, and killed more than 500 terrorists in intense close-quarter combat. The IDF said that Hamas had turned Jabalia's civilian infrastructure into a fortified combat complex and opened fire at troops from schools and other sites where civilians were sheltering, and built tunnel networks under civilian buildings. Meanwhile, amid the fighting, Hamas published a new propaganda video featuring the voice of Israeli hostage Noah Argamani, in which she urges the country to bring about her release after what she said had been over 237 days in captivity. The date that the recording was made could not be verified.
As Hezbollah continues attacks on Israel's northern front, the IDF is facing increasing pressure on multiple fronts, including the diplomatic front. As mentioned, the proposal from President Biden to have a 6-week pause in fighting followed by negotiations is still on the table. Here to speak with us about all of these challenges is Dr. Kobi Michael of the Misgav Institute. Kobi, thank you so much for joining us today. To start, I'd love to hear your take on Biden's proposed ceasefire deal. Is this something that Israel can or even should accept?
Good afternoon. I think that there are some flaws or some problems with this proposal. Although it is referred to Israel and it was introduced as a proposal of the Israeli government, I think that it is a very creative interpretation to the Israeli government framework or proposal. I would say that there are at least 3 major problems. The first one is the second phase of this proposal that says that the ceasefire or the pause will continue as long as the negotiation will continue, which means that even if this phase will last more than 6 weeks, the pause will last more than 6 weeks. And as far as I know, Hamas, it will last not 6 weeks, but 6 years, because Hamas has no interest to release all the hostages, because these are the hostages, unfortunately, are the most efficient policy insurance that Hamas has, and they will demand very clear guarantees from the US that Israel will not resume the war and that Israel will not attack or will target Hamas leaders or activists, something that Israel cannot agree. The second problem is the idea of the replacement of Hamas. President Biden didn't refer to that. Who is going to replace Hamas? Because according to the proposal that was introduced by President Biden, Hamas will remain there, because if now we are entering to phase 1, to a pause or ceasefire, it means that we are entering a pause where Hamas is still in power. So although we said in one sentence that Hamas will not remain in power, eventually Hamas remains in power. And how exactly any entity will be able to replace Hamas in the Gaza Strip, where Hamas is still in power? And the third problem that I can refer to is the asymmetry, the absurdic asymmetry that President Biden created between the US and Qatar. US will guarantee the commitments of Israel, and Qatar will guarantee the commitments of Hamas. First of all, US as a superpower and Qatar, okay, as a sort of a very small regional player here, and there is a symmetry between of them. Secondly, Qatar has an interest that Hamas will remain in power. Qatar is the biggest provider and supporter of Hamas, so how exactly we can rely on Qatar? We saw what Qatar did till today, and Qatar till today didn't exercise all the leverage that it has over Hamas. So I think that in order to summarize, I would say that we are talking about a very problematic proposal with a very low probability that it will be eventually realized.
Now, moving to the north, we do see a significant escalation in those attacks against Israelis by Hezbollah. What is prompting this escalation the last few days, and how do you believe that Israel should respond?
The escalation in the north is not something new. Unfortunately, Hezbollah, since October 8th, set the equation, the kinetic equation between Hezbollah and Israel, and Hezbollah just take the threshold of this equation upper and upper, almost in each day, and mainly recently. And unfortunately, Israel is only, I would say, Israel is very reactive in this regard. Israel does not initiate. And Hezbollah finds itself in a sort of a strategic comfort zone because they have the backing of Iran that feels that there is no deterrence because the US is very reluctant with regard to any sort of attack on Iranian assets. And they understand that the US is very reluctant from the idea of expanding the regional war here. So Iran pushes and encourages Hezbollah and the other proxies to escalate the situation. Just yesterday, another missile, ballistic missile that was launched from Yemen was launched over the sky of Eilat. And Hezbollah finds itself in a situation where its strategy is realized in a full success. Israel is dragged to an attrition war that costs a lot, not only economically. They see how the trust crisis between the Israeli society and the government increases, how the mistrust or the distrust of the Israeli society vis-a-vis the IDF is growing, and they have the chance to learn, to study the flows of our defense system and to prepare themselves better to the D-Day. So if we will not change the equation and if we will not initiate, then we will find ourselves in a very critical situation.
Dr. Kobi Michael, unfortunately we are out of time, but I do want to thank you for that critical insight as to the deal and, of course, what's happening on the Northern Front. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Despite political tensions, the United States Congress has officially invited Prime Minister Netanyahu to address the U.S. Congress. Let's hear the full story.
On Saturday, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu accepted a bipartisan invitation to address the U.S. Congress. The invitation comes after weeks of discussion within the U.S. Congress and hotly contested debates over Israel's handling of the Gaza war. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer initially opposed the invitation, having criticized Netanyahu, even urging elections to replace him in Israel. But after further discussions, Schumer agreed to the invitation under the condition it was bipartisan. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell all signed the letter inviting Netanyahu to address the Congress. In response to the invitation, Prime Minister Netanyahu stated he was excited for the privilege to present in front of the representatives of the American people and the entire world the truth about our just war and those who wish to kill us. This week, Netanyahu also expressed his dismay with the United States and their failure, thus far, to sanction the ICC, which recently announced they intend to seek arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant over the Gaza war, a move the United States harshly condemned.
Because there was a bipartisan consensus just a few days ago that said that there would be a bill on sanctions on the ICC if they persist in these warrants. Now, you say there's a question mark. And frankly, I'm surprised and disappointed because I think it's to the detriment not only of Israel's interest, I think it's to the detriment of America's interest because Israel may be attacked first by the ICC, but you're next. America's really the target.
While a final date for the address has not been announced yet, it is expected to take place after the U.S. Congress's August recess.
And now, in an unexpected display of unity during a time of war, dozens of people of faith marched together through Jerusalem this week. Mayan Hoffman has more.
Ahead of Jerusalem Day, which took place today, Jews, Muslims, Christians, and Druze gathered in Zion Square, where they held prayers and sang for peace. They then marched towards the new gate and joined their Palestinian partners from the eastern part of the city. The march ended with a gathering and rally at Jaffa Gate. The Interfaith March for Human Rights and Peace is an annual event. However, this year, with the war raging between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, it took on a new dimension.
דרוש הרבה אומץ להאמין בזמנים קשים, באלוהים ובאדם. זה הכוח שלנו. הוא לא יכול להישאר רק בתוך בתי כנסת, כנסיות ומסגדים. יש לנו אחריות אדירה.
And now ILTV will take you on a trip to Jerusalem's Machne Yehuda market, where you can enjoy the sounds and tastes of the city with correspondent Yuval David.
As I walk here in Jerusalem after a full day of filming, speaking with people, one of the exciting things to do is to go into the shuk, the marketplace. Jerusalem is a vibrant place. Many people talk about religion, they talk about culture, they talk about history, they talk about politics, about peoplehood. But you can't talk about any of that if you don't come here, into the shuk. Maze?
Whiskey and chocolate.
Whiskey and chocolate.
Yeah.
Whoa. We're gonna hope for something good.
Yes.
That was good. I'm a helpful person. It's what I do. What do you find is special about life in Jerusalem?
The stores is special, the people is special, God is special in Jerusalem. You walk here, you feel free, you feel the warmth of the people.
יש לך ערבים, יהודים, מוסלמים, נוצרים,
Israelis
הכל.
and Arabs and Christians and Muslims and Jews, you say.
וכולם פה כמו משפחה, אין פה...
And we're all here like a family, he says.
למרות שיש מלחמה פה עכשיו.
Even though we have a war here now, he says.
אבל פה בירושלים כולם מרגישים...
But here in Jerusalem, we all feel love. He puts a little bit of pistachio.
Coconut, halva.
Why should people come here and eat this amazing, delectable treat?
למה? כי אני מכין את זה, אבא, הצבעות לחימה.
He says the reason you should come and eat here is because his own fingers make it. What's your name?
I am Asaf.
What makes you dance in Jerusalem?
מצווה גדולה להיות בשמחה.
It's a big mitzvah. It's a commandment and a necessity to find happiness.
Yep.
You can feel that you're in Jerusalem. You can see it. There's a different color in Jerusalem. I think we are the best example of coexistence, of people can live together. Just take away the politicians from us.
For the lives of the soldiers, for the lives of the hostages, for all of Israel. Oh, wow. For the love of all of us. Cheers. L'chaim. L'chaim l'kolchaim. Life in Jerusalem is vibrant. The culture, the religion, the history, the politics, but also just the nightlife, the day life. There's so much to see and do here in the city. I suggest you come to Jerusalem, come to Israel, see it for yourself, for all of its wonder, for all of its complexity, and for the greatness.
And now, as anti-Semitism is growing worldwide and Aliyah numbers are skyrocketing, the demand for property in Israel is higher than ever. And where better to go than the holiest city in the world, Jerusalem? And that's where we introduce Il Olam, where history meets luxury. Make sure you scan the QR code and begin your journey on finding your new home in the eternal capital.
Jerusalem construction is currently at an all-time high, as residents and visitors will notice the landscape of the ancient city slowly changing. In an initiative to rebrand and redesign the city, multiple urban renewal projects have been emerging in the Holy City.
We see these days there's a big demand for apartments in Jerusalem. As you know, Jerusalem is a city which is growing. There's a big need and a big demand for new apartments.
The growing need for living space in the Jerusalem area is largely due to the alarming spike in global anti-Semitism. The growing anti-Semitic sentiment across multiple countries has led to a massive wave of Aliyah, which saw more than 3,000 Jews move to Israel since the start of the war. This change alone serves as a catalyst for urban updates to make room for new arrivals. Even in 2023, Jerusalem was honored with the title of the record breaker in urban renewal, according to the Israeli economic newspaper Kalkalist. This movement toward urban renewal is spearheaded by the Ir Olam construction project, which has taken it upon itself to propel the urban image in Jerusalem to the next level.
Jerusalem is going under, I would call it a revolution. concerning construction and new projects. And this mayorship of this mayor, we changed after 40 years that it's been trying to change. It didn't, and now it's happening.
Located in the Givat Shaul neighborhood, Ir Olam stands in a vastly strategic location. Sitting in the entrance to Jerusalem via Highway 16 ensures unparalleled accessibility to the city's main sites, posing an undeniable advantage.
The location that we're at is being surrounded by neighborhoods that have all the infrastructure, all the facilities like schools, shuls, shopping centers, and whatever is needed for the day-to-day.
This new mixed-use concept is going to affect, of course, this area and many other areas in Jerusalem.
We are ready to start immediately, and hopefully we will be on schedule and on budget, and we want the people that are using this building will be satisfied from our work. So we are very proud that we chose to build this building, and we'll do it with a big heart.
Beyond its location, the Ir Olam project is set to contain an array of amenities, services, and centers. The complex is said to have office spaces, commercial outlets, and recreational amenities to create a vibrant urban ecosystem. As construction begins, anticipation is high for the transformation it will bring to the historic flour mill area and surrounding neighborhoods.
For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at iltv.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's weekly review. Stay safe and see you next week.